All right, everyone. Welcome to Chosen Family Church. We are so glad to have you. I am Minister Michael Belong, the minister of the Llama Pack, an alternative church for those left on the outside and community, where we are currently having conversations about what we want to be in this next year after Lent and Easter. And so we'd love to have you here, and are so glad to have you on TikTok, Facebook, and Zoom. Everybody who is joining us across all of those places. If you are joining us on Zoom, please have yourself muted and feel free to use the chat there. On Facebook, leave comments. On TikTok, leave comments, and we will join and respond to those at the end of the service. You might notice that I have a little guest here. I will not name said guest for their privacy's sake. Yeah, but they're really cute and making cute faces at me. So if I'm distracted, I apologize for that. But parenting comes first. Yeah, yeah. We have to parent and love people. All right. So we'll go ahead and go to the next slide. Um, uh, please introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know who you are and with your names and your pronouns, and we'll keep on going. Yeah. Your name is Anani Mouse. Yes. So we'll begin with a land acknowledgement, a statement of faith, some opening prayer, and then we'll jump into four scriptures for today. The sermon is called the new thing that God has always been doing, an exploration of queer liberation. So first, a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge this meeting is being led in the traditional home of Indigenous peoples, including the Catawba, Waxhaw, Chirraw, and Shugari peoples. Yeah. We are grateful to have this opportunity to work on this land. We also take a moment to acknowledge the prominent role that the church has played in the historical and continued oppression and genocide of Indigenous peoples, both here and throughout the world, especially in our neighbors in Gaza. We acknowledge our own personal shortcomings, racism, ignorance, compliance, and microaggressions. We pledge to do better with our words, our actions, our votes, and our dollars. A statement of faith. We believe people of all genders and sexualities are lovingly and intentionally created by God and welcome and fully accepted as they are. You will hear me preach today about queer liberation and all that that means for the church from the very beginning. We will begin with a prayer. Give us grace, O God, to seek the liberation of all. Amen. And hear the first lesson from Jeremiah chapter 31. The time is coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the people of Israel and Judah. It won't be like the covenant I made with their ancestors when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt. They broke that covenant with me, even though I was their husband, declares the Lord. No, this is the covenant that I will make with the people of Israel after that time, declares the Lord. I will put my instructions within them and engrave them on their hearts. I will be their God, and they will be my people. They will no longer need to teach each other to say, Know the Lord, because they all will know me. From the least of them to the greatest, declares the Lord, for I will forgive their wrongdoing and never again remember their sins. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Our second reading, join me in the psalm. A psalm of David when the prophet Nathan came to him after he had just been with Bathsheba. Have mercy on me, God, according to your faithful love. Wipe away my wrongdoings according to your great compassion. Wash me completely clean of my guilt. Purify me from my sin, because I know my wrongdoings. My sin is always right in front of me. I've sinned against you, you alone. I've committed evil in your sight. That's why you are justified when you render your verdict, completely correct when you issue your judgment. Yes, I was born in guilt, in sin, from the moment my mother conceived me. And yes, you want truth in the most hidden places. You teach me wisdom in the most secret place. Purify me with hyssop, and I will be clean. Wash me, and I will be whiter than snow. Let me hear your joy and celebration again. Let the bones you crushed rejoice once more. Hide your face from my sins. Wipe away all my guilty deeds. Create a clean heart for me. God, put a new faithful spirit deep inside me. Please don't throw me out of your presence. Please don't take your Holy Spirit away from me. Return the joy of your salvation to me and sustain me with a willing spirit. There's a song here that I was trying to debate on whether or not I would sing. So if you know it, I hope you join me. Create in me a clean heart, oh O God, and renew a right spirit within me. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. Cast me not from your presence, O Lord. Take not your Holy Spirit from me. Return unto me the joy of thy salvation, and renew a right spirit within me. Second reading is in the book of Hebrews, chapter 5. In the same way, Christ also didn't promote himself to become high priest. Instead, it was the one who said to him, "You are my son. Today I have become your father," as he also says in another place, "You are a priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek." During his days on earth, Christ offered prayers and requests with loud cries and tears as his sacrifices to the one who was able to save him from death. He was heard because of his godly devotion. Although he was a son, he learned obedience from what he suffered. After he had been made perfect, he became the source of eternal salvation for everyone who obeys him. He was appointed by God to be a high priest according to the order of Melchizedek. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. The final reading comes from the Gospel according to John, chapter 12. Some Greeks were among those who had come up to worship at the festival. They came to Philip, who was from Bethsaida in Galilee, and made a request. "Sir, we want to see Jesus." Philip told Andrew, and Andrew and Philip told Jesus. Jesus replied, "The time has come for the human one to be glorified. I assure you that unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it can only be a single seed. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. Those who love their lives will lose them, and those who hate their lives in this world will keep them forever. Whoever serves me must follow me. Wherever I am, there my servant will also be. My Father will honor whoever serves me. Now I am deeply troubled. What should I say? Father, save me from this time. No, for this is the reason I have come to this time. Father, glorify your name." Then a voice came down from heaven. "I have glorified it, and I will glorify it again." The crowd standing there heard and said, "It's thunder." Others said, "An angel spoke about him." Jesus replied, "This voice wasn't for my benefit, but for yours. Now is the time for judgment of this world. Now this world's ruler will be thrown out. When I am lifted up from the earth, I will draw everyone to me." He said this to show how he was going to die. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. And they said unto him, "Sir, we want to see Jesus." This new thing that God has always been doing began in the very beginning of Genesis. God created them male and female. And when God created them male and female, God did not just create them a man and a woman. No, God created one human being, Adamah, the first human being who existed there with both male and female parts. And when God saw that God had made a lonely creature, God then decided, it's not good for humanity to be alone, and instead I will split this human into two halves that match together with the male parts and the female parts, and they will be two different human beings. Male and female became Adam and Eve because God created humanity from the very beginning with a gender binary, with a gender spectrum rather than a gender binary. The first human being did not contain just maleness, but contained maleness and femaleness, and it only became male and female when they were split away from one another. Because separation and difference allows for community and unity in a way that we can't understand if something is simply working together as one agency. This is a reflection of the Trinity. The Trinity is a strange doctrine that we don't really understand. How is it that God can be one God and yet three different persons in the same moment? And yet, our faith teaches that that is exactly who God is, a unity of three persons made of one substance that make up one Godhead, that make up one thing that cannot act without one another's doing, and are completely unified in all of these ways. And how can we say, does this work? What is this strange mystery behind it? And that is the mystery of love. Love unifies. Love requires differentiation because then we can experience one another, then we can understand each other, then we can join in what the other person is doing, and through our separation, become unified again. That is what love is doing, and here it begins in the very beginning that it is not good for humanity to be alone, but that humanity, like God, God's self, ought to be separate persons that are brought together. And if you've followed very much of my scholarly research, you know that I have a particular take on this story, that woman, the first Eve, was actually made out of the penis bone. It's why mammals in the human species, according to the mythos of Genesis, don't have penis bones. And the first woman being made out of the penis bone means that the woman is made out of the male flesh. There is a female person who was originally male flesh and became a woman, making the first human female in the existence of humanity, according to the Bible, a trans woman from whom all other human beings descend. But the story of Genesis does not stay very straight after that either. All throughout the story of Genesis, we see differences. We see people who are supposed to be left on the outside are brought together and are used to bring about salvation. First, we have the trans woman who is the mother of all other human beings. And then we have these strange stories of Isaac, whose attachment to his mother is so severe that once she dies because she hears he's almost been sacrificed, then he weeps and weeps and weeps and takes his wife into his mother's tent to allow her to become his emotional support. That isn't very toxically masculine now, is it? And the gender play continues there for quite some time when Isaac's son Jacob comes up not as the big manly man like Esau, the hunter who goes out and gets dirty and is covered in hair and stinky so that his father could recognize who he is. No, instead, Isaac is the one who stays behind and cooks and follows up with what his mother is doing. And it's only because of his mother that he is able to get the inheritance that he thinks he deserves. And then he goes and he gets all of these wives. He has 4 different women with whom he has children, and only one of them is his favored wife, the woman who was strong, the woman who offered him the things that he needed when he was in the middle of nowhere. And so through her, he has a son, and his name is Joseph. And Joseph is this strange kid who gets given a coat of many colors. Now, a coat of many colors is good because it properly denotes the fact that this is a queer article of clothing. But we don't really have a good translation for it because every other time that it shows up in the Bible, it is a princess dress. It's clothing given to the royal daughters of the king, not to masculine figures. And then the Genesis goes on to call him a boy, far beyond where a normal man would be called a boy. This 16, 17-year-old is still called a boy. And the rabbis denote, why is this strange thing happening? And they say it's because he is light on his heels and he puts on makeup. And he does all of these things that are fine when you're a little girl or when you're a little kid, but when you grow up, you grow out of it. And you fit into the masculine field that Joseph never really fits into. Joseph fits into this queer frame instead. Joseph is a different kind of human. Not straight like all of his brothers, but instead occupying this strange area where he appeals to his gender nonconforming father because I think Joseph is queer too. And this comes on the death of Nex Benedict. Nex was a non-binary kid just trying to live their life happily in the Midwest. And what happened to Nex is the same thing that happens to Joseph. The people who were threatened by who Nex is, by Nex being different, by Nex being who they are, Nex was beaten. Nex was killed. Now, in the story of Joseph, he could have been beaten, he could have been killed, but instead his brothers interfere. Judah and Reuben both say, no, let's not do that. We need to save Joseph's life. We can't be guilty of murder as well. And so they sell him off into slavery for 20 pieces of silver to the Ishmaelites. The Ishmaelites, who are their cousins, who they should know are their family, but instead they sell off their family to people who should be their family. And the Ishmaelites take him into Egypt. Now, what they think they've done, they go and take his princess dress, his coat of many colors, his clear sign that he is a queer human being who does not fit in to the rest of what is going on, and they take it to his father Jacob, this gender non-conforming, soft man, and they say, look, this is covered in blood. A wild animal killed your son. And he weeps. And he weeps and he weeps and he says, it would be better that I had never lived in the first place because I have lost my son. I have lost the human being who understands what it is like to me to be different and who I saw the difference within and wanted to help live in a way that I had never been able to live. Homophobia sent Joseph off to what they thought was his grave, just like it sent Nex off to theirs. But the story here in Joseph is different. Because instead of going off to death, God is there. God intervenes in the story of Joseph and sets up things so that Joseph can, instead of being another victim of homophobia, of transphobia, of all of the hatred of this world, instead God sets Joseph up to be the liberation of their entire family. A famine comes to the land, and Joseph is the only one who has the wits about him to prepare ahead of time. And when everyone in Canaan is dying of starvation and has nothing to eat, his family go to Egypt, and they beg the strange person who wears makeup. It seems a little bit light in the heel. And they beg of him for life. And Joseph is able to give life to these people who offered him only death. He is able to bring about the liberation and salvation of these people who hated him so much, they sold him off for 20 pieces of silver. Queer liberation. The liberation of Joseph in this story is what brings about the salvation of all of his family. And here in today's reading, we have these readings from Jeremiah that say, God is doing a new thing. God is making a new covenant, a covenant that is not based on the old laws and the rule following, but is instead based on love. It is based on loyalty, on caring for one another, on liberating one another. And that liberation is found in our gospel reading, where the Greeks say, "Sir, we want to see Jesus. We want to see this strange prophet who preaches love where everyone else has sought hatred. We want to see this strange teacher who heals and invites in and welcomes all people. We want to see this strange teacher who will invite as his first non-Jewish follower a trans person, a eunuch, who does not fit into the gender binary just like Joseph does not, and instead offers a way of salvation." You see the eunuch traveling that Philip goes and sees, Stephen goes and sees on his way. He knows what's happening here. He knows that when the prophet Isaiah is speaking of the coming Messiah, that he is talking about a way of love that will bring liberation for all people. The eunuch knows that his liberation is tied up in everything else that is going on. That his love and his journey to love is what will ultimately be the salvation of all humanity. God knows that these outsiders, these people that are normally left out, these people who normally aren't brought on to a worship service because they might be loud and they might cry and they might disrupt things. Instead, those are the people that God is calling. And through the liberation of those people who cause maybe a disruption to the way things are, maybe who tear down these heteronormative ways, who tear down these systems set up to eliminate them, instead, those are the ones who Jesus brings in. And that Jesus simply lives into a pattern that God has been doing since Joseph at the end of the very first story of God's people. That Joseph's story is simply continuing on what Jesus does, or rather, offering a blueprint for what Jesus does, because God is always bringing about liberation by taking the least of these and using them to help everyone else. So now, as perhaps you are disturbed and maybe you're a little bit hungry, maybe you just need some comfort. Know that there is no one who has died in vain, because God is using everything that has happened to all of us in the midst of our suffering, even to the point of Jesus dying himself, to bring about the salvation of all. And that is who we get to be. Now, friends, I apologize, but I have another priority. And so I hope that you will go and seek the liberation of all people. And in so doing, participate in God's liberation of your own soul. Shalom. All right, my friends on TikTok, Facebook, and Zoom, thank you for joining us. I apologize. This has been cut short, but I have other priorities. I love you, and I will speak to you soon. Bye-bye.